Why do some of us need more than one God? The notion that there is only one God and that God is one is the very heart of our early Unitarian theology. So my advice to you is this. If you are comfortable with, or at least able to get along with, your one God, stay with your one God. On the other hand, if you are having either intellectual or emotional issues with your one God, you may want to consider what I'm going to say. Most of us grew up with a personal God, and there are some wonderful benefits of having a personal God. With a personal God, you feel like that you can be in relationship with this God. You feel like that you can talk to this God. You feel like that God is not just a father or a mother, but that God is your friend. And that when things are difficult in your life, you are able to take those things to God. This is also where we can get in trouble, though, with God. We get into trouble with our personal God generally at two places. We get into trouble with God sometimes intellectually, when what we believe about God no longer makes sense to us. And it is certainly okay to accept things on faith. But there is this tension between accepting certain things on faith and going to a place of denial and blind belief. And sometimes those absolute qualities that we have been taught to believe in, those absolute qualities get us in trouble. I was taught that God is absolutely good, that God is absolutely love. And I was also taught that God is all-powerful. When I put those two things together in my life, God often gets in trouble. Because if you believe that God is good, all good, and if you believe that God is all-powerful, what happens when tragedy comes into our homes and we have a child who is sick, and we ask God to heal that child? I have a dear cousin, Patricia, who now about 10 years ago buried her 10-year-old daughter after 5 years of hell with a brain tumor. And the physical pain and the emotional pain, the relationship pain that almost separated that family. How do we deal with God then? In my 30-something years of ministry, I have seen people get the most angry at God when God didn't help them the way they thought God should. Sometimes we get to a place where the images and concepts of God that we grew up with no longer satisfy. Either intellectually or emotionally, God gets in trouble. At that point, you may want to consider another set of images and concepts of God that I call transpersonal. This transpersonal God loses a lot. You remember that personal God? How many of us have ever gone to the personal God in times of stress? Come on. How many? And let's be honest, a lot of us have felt the presence and the comfort and even the healing of God. That's part of our reality. But most of us have also felt the absence of God, and that God has let us down. So if we think of shifting to this transpersonal God, you don't have any relationship problems with the transpersonal because there is no relationship. But this transpersonal God, to some people, is much more reliable because we experience that transpersonal God through energy, through the laws of nature, through the laws of cause and effect. And this transpersonal God has no favorites. He does not bestow favor nor take favor. It's very impersonal. And so, if we have this situation where a person is standing right on the edge of a cliff and they are about to fall, and we're standing back there and it is our child, we would say, God, don't let my child fall over that cliff. That would be a natural response for many of us. But with this transpersonal, we lose that. But we know that what will happen is consistent. If the person gets too far over, they will fall, no matter what our prayer or who they are. If they are far enough back, they will be safe. The transpersonal loses a lot of satisfaction in terms of relationship. But for some people, the relationship with God has gotten so bad that they are ready to throw God out totally. I have seen more folks move to atheism in these angry times of disappointment than any other. The transpersonal does not appeal in many ways, but it does appeal to some who need to know that their sense of ultimacy is stable, reliable, and that there is this energy, this presence, this reality that we experience in impartial ways. Well, that's not too attractive to some, but for others it gives stability.